Her first husband agreed to a pregnancy contract to make sure that she was afforded...
Isn't it? It's Trevor who obviously had to deal with that.
The room didn't know how to breathe anymore. You could feel it, that strange pressure that hits when something private turns public in real time. Phones were already buzzing, fingers hovering over screens, journalists halfway between instinct and restraint. No one dared interrupt him. Not because he demanded attention, not because he carried power, but because the sentence itself landed like a weight on the chest, the kind of weight that doesn't lift once it settles. The room didn't know how to breathe anymore. Phones were already vibrating before Trevor Engelson finished his sentence, but no one dared interrupt him. Not because he was powerful, not because he demanded authority, but because the sentence itself had weight. The kind of weight that settles slowly, presses against the chest, and doesn't release once it lands. Sometimes, he said calmly, almost conversationally, it's just a single piece of paper, but that can be enough to end an entire marriage. Working on this project for the past 9 months has been, at first, nobody even understood what he was talking about. This wasn't supposed to be that kind of moment. This was meant to be polished. Soft lights, safe questions, budget talk, casting decisions, creative risks, the predictable rhythm of a film premiere where everyone plays their role and leaves with a quote that doesn't hurt anyone. But Trevor kept smiling, and the smile never reached his eyes. He hadn't planned to say her name. He never does. He doesn't have to. Everyone in that room already knew who the story belonged to. Official project as a royal, a very special cookbook. For years, Meghan Markle's first marriage had been filed away neatly. A footnote, brief, respectful. Two people who simply didn't work out. No villain, no victim. Just incompatibility. That explanation survived because it was tidy, because it didn't demand follow-up questions, because it didn't threaten the larger reinvention that came later. Trevor dismantled that version in under 2 minutes. My ex-wife, he said, not bitter, not sharp, but careful, precise, almost gentle. He said she told him she couldn't have children. He said she showed him a medical report, definitive, clinical, final. The air changed instantly because the woman the world now knew was not childless. She was a mother, twice over. And Trevor knew exactly what he was doing by placing those two truths side by side without spelling anything out. He didn't accuse. He didn't shout. He didn't dramatize. He let the contradiction breathe on its own. I accepted the divorce, he said, steady, composed, not because I wanted out, but because I believed I was respecting her reality. That was the moment everything froze. Because anger can be dismissed. Betrayal can be questioned. But respect? Respect can't be weaponized against the person offering it. He wasn't framing himself as wronged, he was framing himself as compassionate, and that made it impossible to brush away. Then he said the line that changed the temperature of the entire room. Not long after, Trevor added, she began a new life. And then she had children. No gasp, no audible reaction, just the sound of pen stopping mid-sentence. He didn't say it was impossible. He didn't say it was a lie. He didn't even say it was dishonest. He just let the silence do the work. Just let the silence do the work. I'm not saying that's wrong, he clarified almost gently. I'm just saying that when you put those two facts next to each other, something feels unresolved. Unresolved barely scratched the surface. Within hours, the story exploded, not cleanly, not carefully, but in fragments. Headlines sharpened it. Anonymous summaries twisted it. Retellings picked up speed with every repetition. Meghan in tears. Ex-husband breaks silence. Infertility claim sparks new questions. Inside Meghan's circle, the reaction was immediate and furious. Trevor was accused of cruelty, of dredging up private pain, of using medical issues to destabilize a woman who had already been under relentless scrutiny. But the problem was this: Trevor never presented himself as a victim. He presented himself as a man who believed a document, and documents carry authority. 2 days later, under growing pressure, Trevor released a short statement. No emotion, no escalation, just clarity. I did not intend to defame or accuse anyone. I shared my personal experience as it occurred. The facts are the facts as I understood them at the time. Then came the part that quietly shifted everything. He addressed the timeline. According to Trevor, the marriage had not legally ended when his ex-wife began appearing publicly with another man. He avoided the word affair. He didn't need it. He didn't deny overlap either. A witness statement surfaced from a London bar employee. Not scandal, not intimacy, just presence. Meghan and Prince Harry together multiple times while the paperwork was still active. And suddenly this wasn't about morality, it was about sequencing. Which explanation came first? Which justification followed? At the center of it all sat the infertility report. Trevor didn't unveil it dramatically. No clinic name, no press conference, no theatrics. Just confirmation that the document existed and that it had been presented as final. I never questioned it, he said later. Why would I? I trusted her. That trust was the reason the divorce unfolded quietly. No legal war, no resistance, no demands for clarity. He stepped aside because he believed he was honoring something irreversible. Then Meghan had children, and the paper stopped making sense. Her response came 3 days later. Calm, composed, professionally defensive. She denied falsifying documents, denied misleading Trevor, denied using medical information as leverage. She explained fertility diagnoses are complex, temporary, subject to change. What was discussed, she said, has been removed from its medical context. She released additional documentation, not a contradiction, but a reframing. Language about low fertility potential, risk assessments, uncertainty. The narrative shifted again to deal with the ring being returned by post. And you're so right. It's like, this wasn't a lie, her team implied. It was a misunderstanding. But the damage had already settled because Trevor never claimed she could never have children. He claimed the marriage ended because of a conclusion she later lived in contradiction to. And once that question exists, it doesn't leave quietly. As the public split into sides, something strange happened. Trevor didn't capitalize on the chaos. He didn't flood the media. He didn't sit down for long interviews or parade himself as the wounded ex. That restraint only made the questions louder because silence coming from the center of a storm doesn't calm things, it sharpens them. Then another voice surfaced, quiet, anonymous, and devastating. A former employee from the clinic where the infertility report had allegedly originated came forward, not with opinions, not with gossip, with procedure. And procedure doesn't care about emotions. According to the source, Meghan had not appeared in person at the clinic on the date listed. There was no intake form, no patient signature, no laboratory codes attached to the diagnosis. The report existed, but it stood alone, floating, untethered. And in that moment, the story stopped being emotional. It became structural because feelings can be debated, trauma can be contextualized, medical nuance can be defended, but structure either exists or it doesn't. You don't have sign a medical intake. You don't skip identifiers. You don't diagnose without trace. Once that detail entered the conversation, everything shifted. Now, this wasn't about whether Meghan could have children. No serious voice was questioning her motherhood. No one credible was attacking her body. The question was far colder, far sharper. Was a marriage ended by a document that may never have been properly created? That question cracked the foundation beneath every explanation that had come before. Up until then, the story could still be framed as tragic, painful, personal. Two people making difficult decisions in private. But paperwork changes the rules. Paperwork doesn't care who you married later. Paperwork doesn't bow to reinvention. When Meghan finally responded again, the tone was different. Gone was the expansive explanation. Gone was the language about medical complexity and evolving diagnoses. This time, every word felt boxed in, narrowed, defensive. I did go to the clinic, she said. I was examined. But due to privacy concerns and the nature of the consultation, standard procedures were handled discreetly. Discreetly. It's very doable. And that was a big motivator for us, is that single word ignited a new fire. Medical professionals pushed back immediately, not against Meghan personally, but against the implication. Privacy does not erase signatures. Confidentiality does not remove test identifiers. Discretion does not eliminate the need for physical presence. And then silence. No follow-up clarification, no procedural explanation, no documentation trail offered. That silence was louder than any denial. Meanwhile, Trevor did something no one expected. He ended it. No escalation, no demands, no legal threats. Just one final statement, shorter than all the others combined. I trusted a document. I made a life-altering decision based on it. If that document was incomplete, misrepresented, or created under irregular circumstances, then the truth matters. Not for revenge, but for clarity. Clarity. That word reframed everything. Because this was never about punishing Meghan. It wasn't about undermining her children. It wasn't about dragging the past into courtrooms. It was about the story told before the children existed. And stories, once questioned, never returned to their original shape. As analysts revisited old interviews, another detail surfaced. Quiet but persistent. Meghan had rarely spoken about her first marriage in concrete terms. When she did, the explanations were vague. Different paths, growing apart, timing, never infertility, never sacrifice, never a heartbreaking medical revelation that forced a respectful separation. That narrative belonged to Trevor alone, and the fact that it had stood unchallenged for so long raised a question no statement could erase. Why now? Privately, sources whispered that Meghan was shaken, not collapsing, not crying on camera, camera, but destabilized. Because this wasn't an attack she could redirect with broad framing or moral positioning. This was about records, about sequence, about whether deeply personal information had been selectively deployed at a critical moment to justify a decision already made. Then attention shifted again to timing. The proximity between the alleged diagnosis, the rapid divorce, and the early appearances with Harry created an arc that felt almost too clean, too efficient. Was the diagnosis the cause or the exit strategy? That question lingered unanswered. What made the situation heavier was the emotional contrast between the two former spouses. Trevor never asked for sympathy, never claimed betrayal, never accused infidelity outright. His restraint made the implications feel heavier, not lighter. He wasn't asking the public to choose sides. He was asking them to notice inconsistencies. Supporters argued correctly that no one is owed access to a woman's medical history. But this wasn't about access. It was about justification, about whether private information had been used selectively to close one chapter while opening another. As days turned into weeks, the story stopped trending, but it didn't disappear. It settled. It became one of those unresolved chapters that never truly closes. No court ruling, no medical board review, no final exposure. Just two incompatible endings to the same marriage. And in the absence of resolution, perception hardened. Meghan's public appearances became tighter, her language more controlled, mentions of resilience and survival more frequent, as if reinforcing a moral anchor. But the ease was gone. The certainty had evaporated. People listened differently now. Every mention of truth, every appeal to authenticity, every carefully framed narrative filtered through a new lens. What else had been framed instead of explained? Trevor returned to his work. No more interviews, no relevance chasing, no monetization of controversy. And that restraint, more than anything else, made his version harder to dismiss because he had nothing to gain. The final irony was this: the story was never really about infertility. It was about trust, about how one person trusted a document enough to step aside from a marriage, and how another trusted that silence would remain permanent. It was about how narratives are constructed not only by what is said, but by what is never challenged, and once challenged, never fully restored. No one cried on camera, no courtroom door slammed, no definitive truth was declared, but something cracked. The belief that every chapter had been transparently told, the assumption that every exit was clean, the idea that reinvention leaves no residue, because sometimes the most devastating revelations don't come with proof beyond doubt. They come with doubt that refuses to leave. And that doubt, quiet, procedural, unresolved, became the final inheritance of a marriage everyone thought had ended years ago, thought had ended years ago, thought had ended years ago, thought had ended...